Before we make a healthier version of Mutter Paneer, a favorite North Indian dish, I wanted to talk about some huge paradoxes of modern Indian cuisine, which has been a problem just like the standard American diet and the modern Western diet in general. One paradox is that while India is a land with many densely lush areas of vegetation, I mean, after all, America was discovered because the West was so desperately in need of bypassing the Middle East to get to India's treasures, their spices and vegetations and other stuff. It's a country with many vegetarians, and yet most modern Indians do not eat many fresh vegetables, including the vegetarians. Indians, even with so many non-meat eaters, accounts for approximately 60% of the world's heart disease burden, despite having only 20% of the world's population, even in the non-smokers. For age 50. We are fast catching up. Indians are fast catching up with the United States in terms of obesity. And according to the International Diabetes Federation, Indians have the most diabetes worldwide. Several problems with modern Indian diet prevail. We're putting way too much oil in everything, even the light dishes, seemingly light, the lemon rice, the utma. Another paradox is that we take all the nutritious part of the whole grain and have the remaining sugary white rice or nutrient deficient maida pindi, the white flour. And also we're consuming way too much milk and ghee and curd and cream. Many of us frown on and consider it low class to eat raw salads or lightly cooked vegetables and find it insulting to be served brown rice. One interesting point is that Andhra Pradesh and Kerala, two South Indian states, Andhra Pradesh is where my parents are from, they have similar culture, rice-based diets, and yet Kerala has the highest longevity in India, while Andhra Pradesh is very low. According to the Indian Dairy Board, Andhra Pradesh is number one in per capita dairy availability, while Kerala is 11th. Kerala is the one state that eats lots of brown rice. I'm not saying that that's a perfect test as a proof, but it's an interesting observation. Modern Indian food is often fried, and that's increasing the quantity of trans fats. And our food is high in cholesterol. So if we think we can just jog away things like trans fats, that's like thinking you can jog away arsenic. The best way to avoid the toxin is just to avoid the toxin. Another paradox is the issue of dairy. Many Hindus have fond images of ancient Vedic times of cows grazing and being adored. The milk they gave was very sattvic and nurturing. My mom recollects even in her childhood, never dare you would go to the cow to get the milk before the calf drank, and you could get its leftovers afterwards. This is an immensely different reality from the horrific life that most dairy cows, even organic dairy cows, have to withstand. Not too long ago in the news, I saw the practice of, the calf being removed from its mother immediately and how their life expectancies, both calf and mother, were shortened. Another thing is that there's nothing sattvic or ahimsa about this practice. Modern day milk is homogenized, it's treated with agents, it's a far different product of the ancient times. Another paradox is that milk has been generalized. Milk, ghee, curd, all these things have been generalized as a panacea for health. Yet yogic and even Ayurvedic wisdom prescribe something quite different depending on the person's body type, whether they're vata, pitta, kapha, the season, the environment. Second, consuming cold milk, this would include ice cream, was considered very harmful in ancient wisdom. It was also advised not to consume dairy with rice because the dairy would have been acidic and the rice was starchy, and that would impede the amylase in your saliva from digesting it properly. The next paradox is that in ancient times, they lived in calorie deficits, so it certainly would make sense for them to have a little bit of calorie-dense meat or oils or curd or cheese. Unfortunately, we live in a generation of electricity. The moms long ago did not have blenders, so they had to use their own bodies to churn and make chutneys and to make dosa batters and all of that. They would spend a hot day under the sun, no air conditioning, no fridge. So churning the butter and getting the water from the well, it all burned calories. If I'm lucky, I might burn a couple hundred calories if I can exercise every day, but that's just not going to cut it. Japanese, in their traditional diet, they're very healthy and they don't consume any dairy. as long as, we're talking about the traditional diet. Once many Japanese immigrated to the United States, especially Hawaii, they adopted the high milk, high animal product diets, and they also suffered the same health consequences. Archaeologists from the University of Missouri found dental drilling occurred 9000 BC in the Indus Valley, according to the BBC News. The paradox is that in spite of India's rich ancient medical knowledge, our health is tragically plummeting. Sushruta, 600, he was living in 600 BC or so, is known as the father of surgery and ophthalmology. His methods of reconstructive surgery after war wounds was copied by George Screw from Germany and two others in the 1600s, where it spread to Europe. And to this day, reconstructive surgeons use his technique. Ayurvedic medicine prescribes over 700 plant-based medicines, and now modern medicine is just uncovering how anti-inflammatory and chemopreventative things like turmeric and goji berries are. And again, Indians are still right now in the middle of a health crisis. I'm not suggesting that you completely get rid of all animal products and dairy. Again, it worked well for my family. When it's well planned, it can be done. There are many Buddhist monks, like the Koreans and the Vietnamese Buddhist monks, the Christian Seventh-day Adventists, many of them have been living on a vegan diet healthfully and doing really well. And even some Jains are doing it. What I am suggesting is talk to your doctor, chalk out a health plan. At least start by baking things, not frying them, limiting oils to droplets, eating brown rice and other whole grains, lots of legumes, which we actually do a good job of, beans, fruits, vegetables, lightly cooked and some raw salads, avoiding refined sugars and starches, and greatly curtailing or getting rid of animal products, and deciding how much dairy is right for your body type. Dairy is not even recommended in Harvard School of Public Health plate. So in our honor of the dairy cow, and giving the dairy cow a break, I raise my glass of unsweetened almond milk and toast to the future of not just my fellow Indians, but people all over the world.
The dish that we're going to make today is called Mutter Paneer, and paneer is basically Indian cheese. It's a North Indian dish, and it's a favorite amongst many. It's guaranteed to disappear first, especially with the kids, and why not? It's cheesy, it's thick, it's rich, it's creamy, it's tomatoey, it's got all the right things going on for the taste buds. Unfortunately, this traditional route that I was making was through using cheese. You make the cheese with milk, and then you cut the blocks of cheese into little cubes. So it's cheese is one of the highest amounts of saturated fat, dangerous, saturated fat that you could have in a food source. So you cut these blocks of cheese and then deep fry them, and that was what I was doing before. So then you're transforming a lot of these fats into trans fats, because most oils will convert your food into trans fats, which are very dangerous, and you can't jog away these trans fats. It's like saying that you can exercise away arsenic or lead. You really can't cleanse your body out of cholesterol and trans fats and these types of things. You really have to give your body some time to get rid of them by eating the right things. So, and the next step of the dish would be to typically saute the tomatoes and the garlic and the other spices with oil, and then you could add cream to the oil, to the paste, and then you could add, if you'd like, cashew paste. So it's a really heavy, dense dish. We're going to make it deliciously, but we're going to use tofu. Now, you want to get firm tofu. I like to get organic, and with the firm tofu, what I typically do to make the texture more resilient and cheese-like, because a lot of people, including myself, have a texture issue with improperly cooked tofu. So the way to enhance making the cheese-like texture is you're going to freeze it, and the advantage to that, it stores for a long time too. And when you're ready to use it, then you just put it in the fridge overnight, or just leave it outside for several hours so that it thaws. And then you squeeze out all the water from it and cut it into cubes, and it becomes very firm and chewy, and has a really great texture. So the next step is to drain the water, because it's in this little water bath, the tofu out of the water. There we go. And you want to squeeze all that water out of your cube of tofu, the block of tofu. You can even then wrap it in some paper towel to get the last amount of fluid out of your block of tofu. So here's our not cheese part of our cheese recipe, and the tremendous amount of calories and fats that you would get in a block of cheese, especially a block of fried cheese. This is where the diabetes comes from. It doesn't come from the grains so much. It comes from the oils that we add and the fats, which explains why Japanese, in their traditional diet, not in the diet of the steakhouses and what we think is what Japanese people traditionally had eaten in the past, but they were heavy rice eaters, but very low on the fat, hardly fried things in their traditional diet. And diabetes and obesity and heart disease are quite low amongst that population. So, it is nice to transfer to brown rice and quinoa, but this what would be a block of cheese and saturated fat and then trans fats when we fry it, we're going to avoid, and that's going to help reduce our risks for diabetes and heart disease and those other ailments. So we're going to cut the tofu into little cubes. So there we have our blocks of tofu cut into little cubes. Now you want to take a non-stick pan or skillet, and you're going to, instead of deep frying these little blocks, we're going to toast them, and it's going to enhance the texture of this tofu. So we'll just add these to the pan. It's heating. The other advantage to tofu, if you'll notice that the rate of breast cancer and other types of cancers are lower in Japan and Southeast Asian countries on their traditional diet. That is changing as the diet changes and the amount of saturated fats go up. But there have been several studies, one involving 9,000 patients, and there was a huge study conducted in California to show that tofu, tempeh eaters had a reduced incidence of breast cancer. So, tofu in its whole, soy in its whole untainted form. Of course, even better than tofu would be tempeh, because it's even less nutrients are removed from it. It's more whole and intact. It's a great source. As far as soy supplements and such, I would avoid them. They should be considered more like medicine, soy supplements, and they'll have side effects. And we really don't know exactly what they do to people, but yeah, I would avoid them. But huge studies such as the Nurses Health Study, the Framingham studies, the Framingham research has demonstrated that saturated fats are a huge ingredients to the heart disease, the cancers in general, and by removing that, again, the block of cheese is a saturated fat, condensed saturated fat. You're gonna just put them on low heat so they don't stick so much, and they'll start toasting. So if they start sticking to the bottom, and I guess I'm a little unlucky today because they stuck a little bit, not too much though. You want to lower the heat so that they toast up gradually. But they're still doing a good job. I've noticed that using firm tofu also is an excellent substitute for ricotta cheese. If you're making a lasagna, it turns out quite nicely. Okay, so these have been toasting without oil on the pan, on the skillet, for maybe 10 minutes, and I'm going to bring them closer. As you can see, that all corners are toasted brown, and they really do retain a nice, that's a little blurry, a nice firm texture. They're beautiful. So to the 3 large tomatoes that we chopped up and we've put in the pan, we've put in a heated pan, we're going to add half a large onion that's been chopped up. And again, doesn't matter how small or large you chop them because all of this stuff is going to get pureed when we cook it. To this, we're going to add 3 large cloves of garlic. Actually, it was 2 large cloves and 3 very tiny cloves of garlic. So I'm going to say that's 3 large cloves of garlic. We're going to add a piece of ginger. Now, if you're worried about your ginger spoiling, as it does sometimes, what I do sometimes is chop them up, put them in little freezer bags, freeze them, and every time I want to use a piece of ginger, I will grate it, and I'll put the rest in the freezer again so they don't become soggy. But we're going to put this whole piece of ginger, it's about ½ inch. And again, we're going to puree these things. I'm sorry I keep repeating myself, but so it doesn't matter that I didn't grate it or anything. To this, we're going to add some cashews. Now this is about the only fatty part of our recipe, and since Mutter Paneer is supposed to taste as if you put heavy cream in it and be thick and heavy, we need to add these. Again, they're healthy fats. We're not frying them and making them trans fats. And really for 5 hungry people, you're not really eating that many cashews. We're just going to add this to make it creamy and thick. So in they go. Those will be pureed too, of course. And then you can add salt to taste at the very end so that you can control that a little bit. But we're going to put the lid on and let them soften up real good. So our tomatoes and cashews and onion and garlic and ginger have been softening up quite nicely. And I'm going to turn it off and now let it cool down, because we're going to have to puree this in our blender. We want it nice and cool. The tomato onion mixture has cooled down, and we need to have a masala or a spice to it, in addition to the garlic and the ginger that we added. Now, if you've got time and you're motivated, you could saute these in a teaspoon of oil to enhance the flavor of these seeds, or even dry roast them. But you can have a chili or 2 if you like it spicy, a teaspoon of coriander seeds, a teaspoon of cumin seeds, 4 or 5 black pepper, and a teaspoon of fennel. And then once you've roasted them with a little tiny bit of oil, like ½ a teaspoon of oil, you can put that mixture into here and then finely puree it. If you do not have time, you could use a curry powder packet that has, no funny business going on in the ingredients. I really like this brand of curry mixture. What I'll do if I don't have time, I'll use like 2 tablespoons of this wet paste and put it into the curry mixture and blend that all together. And whatever's left over, I put it in a sandwich Ziploc bag, a freezer bag, and put it in the freezer for later use. I'm going to use this, and what I would say is adjust these ingredients as you need to. You know, this is probably a mixed audience that's listening to this, so some people can't handle any of this stuff. Some of my family wants me to put like 5 or 6 of these, probably I should. And then you can adjust the other spices to your liking. The other thing is that we have to add salt to taste. I'm going to start with a teaspoon of salt and then figure out if it's right for the taste buds. And I know that in my family we don't like a sour type of consistency for our tomato sauce. So I like to add about 3 of these pitted medjool dates. Make sure that they're pitted. Instead of adding sugar, at least we have the added nutrients and fiber from the dates, and then we're going to puree that too. All right, so these seeds have toasted, and we're going to add them to the pan over here. Okay, and we have about half a teaspoon of salt that I'm going to add into the mixture, half a teaspoon. And we're going to stir that around. It's cooled down, and we're going to puree it. We've put our tomato mixture, and we're going to make a puree. Okay, so we're going to pour the puree mixture into our pan. After tasting it, I think it's going to need another 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So we'll just taste as we go along. I'm adding about 2 heaping cups of frozen peas. These are organic. And we're going to add our toasted cubes of tofu into it. And then we're just going to put this, we're going to stir all of this and put it under a light simmer. And, you know, before you cover it, just give it a final taste. And, you know, if you think it needs a little bit more salt or more sugar, or maybe you want to add extra curry powder or, you know, your own homemade version, this is the time to add it. And then you're going to cover it up for probably like 15 minutes. So Mutter Paneer is traditionally eaten with a bread. I mean, it can be eaten with rice. Unfortunately, it's eaten with white rice most of the time instead of like a more whole grain, such as brown rice with all the nutrients and fiber. And but more typically, it's eaten with a bread, such as puris. And puris are usually made with white flour, maida pindi. So it's the white flour which had all its fiber and nutrients, or almost all of it, removed. And then it's made into like a tortilla-shaped bread and deep fried. So there we go with the trans fats and the high amount of fat. And connect the dots why many of us are getting diabetes and heart disease and cancer eating this way. But it can also be eaten with naan bread. And naan bread is typically made with maida pindi, which is the refined white grain. And usually curd or yogurt is added to, and then it's heated or heated on a pan with butter, ghee. So we're going to make naan bread, and because at least it's not deep fried, and we're going to use wheat flour, 100% whole wheat pastry flour. And I like this is because it's going to really make it nice and soft and light and tear apart really wonderfully. I don't like the stone ground wheat flour because I miss that softness that you would get if you were actually eating white flour. So this is a really good option, this pastry flour that's 100% whole wheat. Or if you don't have pastry flour, it could be just finely ground wheat flour. And instead, and we're not going to use any oil and any butter or ghee, and it's just going to turn out really nice and fluffy. So if you live in a hot, sunny environment, you can nicely put your dough covered in a bowl outside so that it can rise. But I live in Pittsburgh, so sometimes the sunshine doesn't come, so I have to rely on my oven. So what I'm going to do before I make my bread dough, I'm going to preheat the oven at 200 degrees. And then I'm going to stop the oven and let it cool down. So just so that it's warm enough for me to put my hand in as if it was a very warm sunny day. And that's where I want to put my bread dough to rise. I've got a tablespoon of brown sugar. I prefer the brown sugar over the white sugar because there's more nutrients in the brown sugar. You don't want to do too much of brown sugar either. Also because brown sugar is vegan, there's no animal products used. I think white sugar uses ground up animal bones for some kind of filtering process. But you know, it's not a crucial step that you use brown sugar, but we're going to do it today. So we've got a tablespoon of brown sugar, and then to it we're going to add about a half a cup of lukewarm water. And that's so we can welcome the yeast to nicely rise. And so here we've got some active dry yeast. And I'm going to put a tablespoon of that dry yeast. And we can stir it around. And then in 5 minutes, we should see evidence of it activating. And it's been about 5 minutes, and you can tell that your yeast has activated because those granules are now kind of like colonies that have congealed together, as you can see. We have a really nice big metal mixing bowl for our dry ingredients. And it's important to have a nice big bowl so that you have good room for your bread dough to rise. And here we have our 100% whole wheat pastry flour. So roughly about 3 cups of flour. Iodized sea salt. And again, salt is a crucial factor. I have to taste the dough as I go along to figure out how much salt I may need, but you want to start low and go up as you need. And then other thing is I'm going to give my dry ingredients a good stir before mixing in the wet. Now this dough can just as well be used for your pizza crusts. It could be used to make pita bread and all sorts of yummy things. Wet ingredients into our dry ingredients. And I'll use my hands. I find it much easier to use my hands now. And mix the ingredients. And I have 1 cup of water in this bowl. And I'm just going to add little bits at a time as I go along, little bits, until we have a nice dough that doesn't stick to your fingers. Looks like we're going to need more. And of course, if you add too much water, you could add extra flour and keep kneading. Okay, so the dough looks like this, and we're basically going to continue to knead it for about 5 minutes, I'd say. I think it activates the protein in the wheat and helps to make the dough a better bread. And we're going to put our dough in the large mixing bowl, and we're going to cover it. Make sure the cover is as airtight as we can get it to be. And then we're going to put that in the oven. I've turned off the oven about 5 minutes ago. I've put my hand in there. It's very lukewarm, very comfortable for this dough to rise. We're going to close it and leave it in there minimum for an hour until it doubles in size. I took the dough out of the oven and it doubled in size, as you can see. And for it to double in size, it'll usually take about 1.5, 2 hours. And we're going to take our dough out, and you can see there's so many holes in the dough, and I don't want to knead the dough, because then I'll get rid of those pockets, and that's really what we want. That'll help make our dough very airy and bread-like. So we'll take some of our pastry flour and make sure that we have a good dry place to roll the dough. And we're going to make these into balls. So just to make them even, we're going to make them into balls. And I like to take this size and very lightly roll it. I don't like to roll away those air pockets inside. So we've rolled 9 of these balls, and they're going to be pretty big naan breads. And the next step is to take our flour, and then on each side, and even on these sides, we can dust each ball with flour. Now, I had mentioned before, you can use this dough to make pizza dough. So we've dusted all of these dough balls, and I forgot to mention, when you're at this stage, you should start your oven and put it to the highest temperature. Mine goes to the maximum of 550 degrees. So we want to create a nice hot atmosphere when we roll these out. And we're going to put this aside. We've got our nice dry surface. And we're going to very gently roll this so that it's about 1/4 of an inch thick. So this sure beats frying them like puris, because the puris are going to be very diabetogenic and pro cardiotoxic for vessels. Cardiovascular inflammation occurs when we go overboard with all that frying. Okay, so that's like about 1/4 of an inch. We'll keep going. Okay, so we have the 9 naan breads rolled out. It doesn't matter if they're not perfect circles. So before you get started rolling your balls of dough, you want to preheat the oven to the highest it goes. This oven goes maximum to 550 degrees. So we're going to also get the oven nice and hot. And I like to put the pan in there already so that, everything is going to be hot. And once we put our bread, it'll rise quite nicely. And now, of course, using a good oven mitt, you can pull the rack out and then try to quickly place your breads in there so that the heat doesn't escape. And probably will fit about 3 at a time. And turn on the light because it can happen pretty quickly. And you want to watch. It'll usually take anywhere from 2 minutes to 3 minutes for it to rise. Oh, it looks like 2 of them have come up really nicely. Let's root for the third one. I guess that'll be mine if it doesn't. It smells like bread in here. So nice. Okay. So, voila. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but we're going to try to get a better score. As you can see that they're brown and oh so delicious smelling. And we're going to put them out here to let them cool. You don't want to cover them up at this point. Okay, we're going for the last batch of the 9, and actually we have, okay, so we're going to put 1, 2, and we have this little tiny baby. All right. Aw, look at the little naan breads. This one puffed up so nicely. I'm going to be daring and use my fingers. Aw, look at that. That's for the baby of the family. Okay, we're done. Just air dry, and then when they've cooled down, you can cover them. If you're not going to eat them right away, you can put a paper towel on top and then cover it so that the moisture doesn't make it soggy. And the great thing about this bread is that you can if you don't get to it right away and you have leftovers, you can wrap them up and freeze them, and I think they save better that way. It's interesting to note the ready-made store-bought, tortillas and Indian chapatis and the ready-made store-bought breads. They have a really unusually long shelf life. I mean, you could literally keep those breads just sitting there, and they don't spoil, they don't dry up, and these do. You'd have to eat them pretty rapidly, which makes me think how different the product that you make at home is from the stuff that we buy on the shelves. Even the stuff that's labeled with no trans fats. The FDA allows for some trans fats to be in food if it's low enough, but no trans fats is acceptable. All right, so here we have the Mutter Paneer, and we have our naan breads that puffed up just like puris. So delicious. And I just want to give you a little bit of a feel for what it's like on the inside. So we'll just open it up and show you how nicely a pocket formed. Wow, it's just amazing. And then we're going to take a cube of the soy paneer, and it really has the feel and the texture. It's because and it has soaked a lot of the gravy. And as always, I suggest pre-filling with some veggies. Maybe you could put some lime or lemon juice and having fruit. And this actually goes along with what a lot of yogic textbooks say about a diet. You want to pre-fill with the fruits and vegetables because they really have a safety mechanism. They're very calorie low and so nutrient dense. And so if you eat these first, they're on your tummy crowding out, so you're not overeating the calorie dense foods. So certainly this is a lot less calories than fried cheese in an oily gravy with extra cream on it, and fried white refined dough balls. This is certainly very fiber dense, but see if you can get into the habit of this and enjoy.
So for those of you who are not familiar on how to eat this, you would basically just tear off a piece of the naan bread and sop up some of the Mutter Paneer or the curry within it. So I hope you enjoy. Take care.
So we have some mung beans that we've just put into some plain water. Okay, it's the next morning, and you can see that the beans are starting to sprout. And what I do at this point is I will drain any remaining water, and you can start eating, a tablespoon of these mung sprouts for the benefit. But I'll drain out any remaining water, and I will put a damp paper towel
one that I've squeezed all the water out and it's damp, and I'll cover it completely so it doesn't dry up, and then that way these will sprout even further. This is day number 2 of your sprouted mung beans. And throughout the day, whenever you notice this towel is damp, just make it, or whenever you notice this towel is dry, just re-wet it, strain it, and make it damp again. And I had to change this, make this paper towel wet 2 times yesterday and again today, this morning. And as you can see, day number 2, the sprouted mung beans are really nice and long, and probably, eat a tablespoon a day or so. That's what I do. Probably by day number 4, that's the maximum we can leave it outside, and then we'd have to put in the fridge. And our first bowl of sprouted mung beans, is low, and so we're going to continue the assembly line and start another batch. And isn't there just something amazing that something like this becomes something like this in a couple of days? The boxed cereals that we tend to think are so healthy and fortified with nutrients has nothing over these sprouted grams.